was no evidence that Mr. Noriega was involved in drugs, no hard evidence until we indicted him.
Does the NSA collect any type of data at all on millions or hundreds of millions of Americans?
No, sir.
It does not.
Not wittingly.
Have we ever tried to meddle in other countries' elections?
Oh, probably, but it was for the good of the system.
Oh, we don't mess around other people's elections, Joe?
Welcome to another episode of the Rackets Podcast. My name's Brian Sadie. I've got some really important news that I want to share with you all. It's about the assassination that happened back in 2021 of the Haitian president Moise. This is a story that there's been a lot of reporting on this issue, but there hasn't really been enough critical thinking, that I would say. And really, the purpose of this podcast, I'm going to go over a few things. I'm going to cover some news that has not been reported, and it has to do with the fact that one of the main leaders, who was alleged to be the financier of this assassination, had direct links with the U.S. intelligence agency. I'm not saying that the U.S. government gave their full-pledged support behind this assassination, but what conclusion I think you'll come to is that the U.S. government had plenty of advance notice, knew about what was going to happen, and possibly could have prevented this from happening. And when you look at the news and what happened after the assassination, there was this power vacuum that happened in Haiti. There was already a bad human rights situation while Moise was in office. He was a corrupt leader, but afterwards there's been no public elections, and it's a major humanitarian crisis. It's estimated that half of the citizens there need humanitarian aid. Haiti is now I believe it is has the highest per capita rate of kidnappings in the world. And there's an estimated roughly 200,000 people who are considered to be domestic refugees with their own country. The security situation has become so bad. And again, one of the conclusions that I think that you're going to make by the end of this video is that the United States government has a hand in that chaos, right? So let me share with you, let's get into it. Okay. So there's a lot to this story. So again, you're going to have a much better understanding of what happened with that assassination. You're going to have a much better understanding of who was involved. And you're also going to really know how much the government knew. And I would say also the real lack of accountability that has taken place as a result of the United States government, right? So just to review, some of you are very familiar with this story. Some of you really don't have a lot of knowledge. And I think that this will be useful for everyone, right? So in July 7th of 2021, the president of Haiti was assassinated. There was a group of roughly 20 or so mercenaries there in the palace who committed, who are a part of that murder. But there were a number of people associated with it that organized this, financed it, and supported it. Right. So some of the key leaders were located in the United States. Again, some of the people involved have been convicted and sentenced. Some of them are still awaiting trial. I'm speaking in terms of, what's available and what is my opinion. Right. So the real piece of news that I'm talking about is that, again, this guy, Walter Ventimiglia, his attorney, the person who essentially gave the legal go-ahead, even though there was no legal go-ahead, is a member of the U.S. intelligence agency. That's what I talked about at first. And when you look at some of the key players involved, a number of these people were government informants. And there were meetings with the FBI, notice given to the U.S. State Department, not in those exact terms that there's going to be an assassination. But as we dive into the detail of this, I think you're going to be really alarmed, right? So let's go into who was involved, right? So as of today, when I speak of these two people, they have not been convicted. In my opinion, there's a mountain of evidence suggesting so, right? So the first person I'm going to point to is Tony Intriago. That's the man on the right side here. Venezuelan American. He's lived in the US for quite a while. He is the CEO of his own company, CTU Security, a security contractor, right? One of the other high level people from that company, I don't know how to pronounce it, Archangel Pretel Ortiz. I'm just going to refer to him as Ortiz moving forward. He was an active FBI informant right up until this assassination. And as you'll see here, he and others had met with the FBI. There's a lot of controversy as to whether they did discuss regime change in Haiti and what exactly they did discuss. I'm going to show you some court documents to present something that you might not be aware of, right? So let's just kind of get into a little bit of the background. So both of these individuals have some background, I would call it, in regime change, right? So if we look at that 2019 Venezuela live concert, I would beg you just to look at the link from my website that's in the show notes. The USAID acknowledged that this was a soft sort of component of regime change. It sounds, totally innocent, but one of the organizers there was Tony Intriago, right? So they have some both of them are very right-wing background. So Ortiz, again, FBI background, he was an informant in a case of a weapons trafficking case in which people were trying to sell weapons to the FARC. He is one of the informants, again, very right-wing, had a background in counter narcotics there in Colombia. And what's so interesting is that in October of 2020, that's where these pictures are taken. These are provided by the Bolivian government. It's believed that they were in sort of those initial stages of planning a coup. So an election took place. A very leftist leader was elected there in Bolivia. These pictures of them in the airport, and a number of the individuals who were involved in the assassination of Moise were also present, in conjunction with them in Bolivia. A coup did not take place at that time. It's just sort of believed that they didn't have enough support, that there was a wide enough of a margin of victory, but it was sort of in the preliminary stages. So what's so interesting is that takes, they're there in Bolivia, and really 4 months later, they're involved in another attempt at regime change. So evidence shows that February of 2021, that's when the plot started. That's when the plan started, right? So those are the security contractors. I mentioned a person who's accused of being the financier. That's Walter Vientimilla. He doesn't have, as far as I can tell, any kind of background with something like that. Has really no known history of that. So he, owned I believe, a mortgage lending company there in South Florida, but the records show that he had extended, these different parties gathered, and what was originally supposed to be an arrest and an arrest warrant basically from the United States, that somehow these guys are the ones who were tasked with it. But the original plan was supposed to be an arrest and removal of Moise. And he's the person who extended a $175,000 line of credit to get this operation going. Like I said, I've come across court documents that a person, initials JC, because Vietnamese, he's Ecuadorian descent as well, and his advisor or lawyer is Ecuadorian as well. He is currently exiled in Bolivia, but again, I'm going to go into more details later. He's the person who essentially gave it the thumbs up, gave it the legal stamp of approval that what they were doing was all on the up and up. When you start to look at transcripts and text messages, everyone there was aware that this was illegal, but that was sort of, to me, what's, again, really alarming is that someone of U.S. intelligence was aware of what was going on And our government allowed this to happen, that there wasn't enough notice given. That, in my opinion, this could have been prevented. And again, I'm going to go into the details more so later. I want you to have a better picture of, everyone who's involved, right? So one of the people I mentioned on that first line is a DA informant. That's the guy here on the right, Joseph Vincent. I don't remember if he was born in Haiti, but he spent a good portion of his life in both the US and in Haiti. Actually spent 10 years in Haiti as a DEA informant. One of the things with informants, with law enforcement and intelligence agencies, you're usually going into that from one of two ways. You have a criminal background and you're working off your sentence. That's how you stay free. Or there's money involved, and or both. You're doing it because you get paid to do so, right? So after this assassination takes place, there are records showing that he was in contact with his DA handler. I don't know of any record showing that he had contact before to discuss that. Doesn't appear so, right? The person to his left, James Salages, who was essentially tasked as the authorized representative for CTU. And the records will show that he traveled quite a bit back and forth between South Florida and Haiti, making a lot of these arrangements, organizing this operation. In particular, there's this signed letter that's supposed to be, again, sort of the legal authority. I'm going to kind of go into that later. He's the person who hand delivers this to CTU that was supposedly signed by high-level Haitian officials to allow this arrest and capture to take place. Anyone who's really kind of read about this story, it should be familiar with this face. He's, again, I can't remember if he was born in Haiti, but again, spent time in both, in Florida and Haiti. Really a presidential hopeful who really has just about no political backing, literally filed for bankruptcy here in the United States, involved in some charities, particularly after the earthquake in 2010. But he's the person originally who CTU security had planned to install into power once Moise was removed. And one of the things you'll see is that, again, when you can look at the communications that have been released publicly, the plan changes and the plan evolves, right? So at one point, when this is really starting to go in motion, it's not actually literally drafts an extensive letter, which I've got linked in the show notes, to the U.S. State Department, saying that he wants to take power. He's going to have a 3-year transition, lead Haiti out of the problems there, right? He eventually loses the support of the group. The text messages show about June 11th, they shift to a former Supreme Court justice who had been removed from power. He's even kicked out of his hotel where he was staying there in Haiti a few days before the assassination. Some analysts have kind of referred to him as a useful idiot, sort of a patsy, so that, whether it goes well or it goes bad, it would probably be kicked out in the immediate aftermath, right? So he is still pending trial. Frederick Bergman, an associate of his, they were both directors at one of these nonprofits based out of Florida, providing aid to Haiti after the earthquake. Tampa business owners, licensed CPA. He recently did plead guilty. He's had the lightest sentence of everyone who's been sentenced has received a life sentence. He's got a 9-year sentence. It does seem that he was a smaller player in this conspiracy, so he's sentenced to 9 years. Provided the bulletproof vest for part of the assassination team. This is a very important person, in my opinion, a pretty high level important part of this conspiracy. John Joel Joseph. He's a former senator. In my opinion, again, this is purely speculation, but in my opinion, I'm assuming that he was kind of hoping to push out Sanan, but they sort of use Sanan as that face. But he's a former senator there in Haiti. Records show very big part of organizing this. He did travel to those meetings back in April in Florida, rented the vehicles for the assassination team, and in fact, even met with some of the key and most powerful gang leaders in Haiti right before the assassination to try to get their support, to try to basically say, hey, we're not going to come after you. You'll remain in power, along those lines, right? So he was eventually extradited to the United States. He did plead guilty and is serving a life sentence. So not very clear in this picture, but this is one of the meetings that I was referring to there. So this was in April of 2021, a few months before the assassination. This is a picture from the federal police in Haiti. You can see Solage is there to the left. That's Intriago, again, from CTU Security. The gray hair, that's Sinan. John Joel Joseph right there, standing up. That's Vientimilla, the financier, right? So even more connections to the United States. Another one is, again, another DEA informant, Rodolphe Jar. I don't know if that's pronounced correctly. His involvement just strikes a chord with me. So one of the things that you will see with Haiti is it's, I believe, the poorest country in this hemisphere, but it doesn't mean that there's not wealth and assets there. It's just almost entirely concentrated in the 1% of the 1%. There are oligarchs there who have tremendous political power. Many of those oligarchs are funding those gangs. A lot of the politicians are as well. That's really creating so much of the chaos in this country. So this is a person born with a silver spoon in their mouth, to say the least. So their family owns the bottling contract for Coca-Cola in Haiti, all kinds of other wealth. So somebody born with all that you could ask for. Well, and so has business contacts with the former president, Michel Martelly. But guess what? He's also a big drug trafficker. And you're going to see that too. When you start looking into some of the powerful families in Haiti, some of them do have a lot of, alleged links to drug trafficking. So he was arrested back in 2013, part of a 425 kilo cocaine bust. Just to kind of give you a bit of his character there. So he, he became a formal informant to get his sentence down, actually stole 50 kilos of cocaine for himself, hid that from the DEA. So he was another one of the very key organizers, again, sort of representing, your bourgeoisie elite interests there, provided weapons for this. He did eventually, again, was extradited, did cooperate with the U.S. authorities, pled guilty, and he is serving a life sentence. Another key organizer, another DEA informant, former DEA informant, Joseph Felix Badio. So he has had multiple stints in the Haitian government, in the Ministry of Justice, if I remember correctly, also in an anti-corruption unit. So he was fired, a few months before the assassination for ethics violations. And really, again, one of the key organizers, literally surveilled the palace. He, had eyes on the team there. But not only that, part of the cover-up. So he had records show he had two phone calls with the basically transition government, the Haitian Prime Minister Ariel Henry, literally about an hour after the assassination took place. One of those calls was a 7-minute phone call. So you have to think about it for a second. The assassination took place roughly around 1:30 in the morning. And he's having a phone call about 3 o'clock in the morning on a Wednesday. So according to the prime minister, because these records have come out, he said that he just didn't recollect. He couldn't remember what that phone call was about. So if you had a random phone call at 7 o'clock in the morning on a Wednesday that happened to take place an hour after an assassination, I would think that you'd remember that. Not only that, Badio was seen visiting him multiple times. And again, he was wanted by the police in Haiti, like a known associate of these assassins. And he was able to live, very free for presumably would remain free, but he went to the grocery store and a brave person, knew of him, reported on him, and he was captured. So he was arrested in October of 2023. I don't believe he has been extradited to the United States. So this is a very important part in this story. So if you remember, when I mentioned someone he's really been the face when you Google, you start reading about this. This is typically sort of the face of this operation. Well, what happened is the leaders there at CTU, they started, I guess, not sure exactly, but they started to realize that when you look at the Haitian constitution, Sanan, I guess because of his time of residency, I don't remember the exact rules, there's no way that he could legally become the president of the country. So they start looking for a different person to install. And this is the person who they did choose, right? So she was a former Supreme Court justice. Timing is very interesting on this. So she was removed in February of 2021. That coincidentally is the same month that Moise was supposed to leave power. He overextended his stay. He was taking steps to really look more and more like a dictator. His term had extended again. So he removed 3 people from the Supreme Court, one of which was her, right? There's a letter. This is the letter that the people from CTU security that they claim was their sort of legal authority. It's a letter of request for international assistance, right? Anybody can fake a signature, supposedly signed by her and the district attorney. What I find so perplexing is, well, a couple of things, is that she remains as a fugitive, right? She has denied that this letter was signed by her. In fairness, again, anybody can forge a signature. But she is wanted, by the authorities in Haiti, has remained that way, yet she seems fairly accessible. She conducted an interview with the Miami Herald, again, denying these allegations. The more serious evidence comes from the fact that 3 days before the assassination, so many of the people involved in this assassination claim that they met with her days before, and they planned on moving into this transition where she takes over. That includes Jar, Solagis, Joseph, Badio, and others. So another really key individual is Dimitri Herard. So he was the head of security for the president. His background has a lot of red flags. So if you look into this case here back in 2015, this massive freighter, it's one of the biggest drug busts in Haiti's history. So I believe it was supposed to be a sugar shipment. Some of the people, they're offloading the shipment, they realize, wait a minute, there's drugs here. So that's sort of like this free-for-all occurs. People are grabbing drugs, taking it for themselves. The authorities get called. I forget Herard's exact title at the time. He shows up on the scene, and allegedly he's basically playing damage control. He is not trying to confiscate the drugs. He is essentially helping the drug dealers. So a couple DEA officials, interviewed him multiple times. Keith McNichols, George Greco. Eventually, were just so disgruntled with the situation because it looked like the U.S. government was covering up to protect essentially their assets in Haiti. Some of the oligarchs and the politicians connected or suspected to be connected in this case. Those DA agents actually got fired. They were whistleblowers about this. So despite Herard's background, all of this corruption, he goes up the chain. Again, he wasn't the presidential advisor at that time. So this helped advance his career in the government. So in 2019, there's a U.S. State Department contract for bulletproof vests, if I remember right, or weapons. I think it was the bulletproof vests. So it wasn't directly connected to Herard, but it was a member of his own family who received the U.S. State Department contract. Very problematic because in the same year, the State Department literally listed him in their human rights report, connecting him with, extrajudicial killings and shootings committed by government forces and then the gangs associated with them. He also was a subject of a U.S. arms trafficking investigation. So you start to connect those dots. This is somebody with unbelievable red flags. So when you look at the murder scene and what happened there on July 7th with Moise, it's he's accused of bribing the different his staff there, because what happens is there's very light resistance. If I remember right, maybe a shot or two fired, but basically this group, they storm the palace and there's initially very little resistance, and that's from his group, right? So he was arrested, right in the aftermath of after the assassination. So him, and also my French pronunciation is terrible, Jean Civil, with another leader of the presidential security, he was arrested as well. Well, guess what? In March of this year, there was a gang attack against the prison where they were staying, and both of them escaped. A number of really high-profile criminals escaped as a result of that prison attack, and they seem to remain at large. So these are some, if you really want to get to the truth of what happened, who all was involved, this is a key person to talk to, right? But again, you can't, because he's no longer in prison. So this is a picture that some of the mercenaries who committed this, who were the ones physically there committing the crime, took. So let's go back to Ortiz for a second. As I told you, he's of Colombian descent, has that background in counter narcotics, FBI informant. He was the one who was tasked with going out there and finding the private mercenaries to go in there. And again, initially this was supposed to be an arrest, right? An international arrest warrant. So last name Geraldo, one of the people who he worked with in counter narcotics, he was one of the leaders. They traveled, this group of roughly 20-something young men traveled to the Dominican Republic in June of 2021. This is one of the pictures they took. When you look at the records, all of them seem to be under the impression that this was a lawful operation, that they were there to, again, just to do it, a lawful counter narcotics operation and arrest the president, right? Receiving $2,700 a month. I don't know much about assassinations, but I would assume that if they knew that this was an assassination attempt, that's not the salary. But again, I don't know. That's me speculating. But my speculation is that I believe their account, when you look at the record, the transcripts, the conversations with their families, the families were excited for him. This was supposed to be a safe and lawful operation where they were making a good salary, right? So one of the people involved, that's this man right here in the middle, Palacios. He was one of the few people who actually did escape the scene. So there was a bad shootout, afterwards. Actually, let me pause there for a second. Let's go into some of the motive and the direction of the operation changed. So initially, this really was supposed to be an arrest. At some point, obviously the orders changed. Now, was every one of these people aware? I don't know, but there were key leaders within that group who did know. And one of the beliefs, and this is, again, from testimony, is that they were of the belief that there would be $45 million in cash stashed in Moise's presidential palace, and the commission that they would get would be 13 million of which. What ended up happening is Moise was just terribly tortured. He had his eye gouged out. He was shot 12 times. In the process, his wife was shot. She did survive. And imagine this, she just played dead. the whole time. She had to listen to all of that while her husband was brutally murdered and tortured. So the New York Times did a really good investigation on this, and it's believed that this group, they were trying to find money, but also they were trying to find some sort of evidence involving a drug trafficking investigation. And it's believed that this drug trafficking investigation was targeting the former president, Michel Martelly, and or some of his close associates. There's seems to be some credibility to it because, well, we'll get into that later. There's just a lot of connections or presumed connections with corruption and drug trafficking with that administration, right? So Badio, go back here, he was supposed to be the one who the assassin team would go in there, they would round him up, get the money, get the evidence, get everything that they're looking for. And Badio was supposed to be the one outside there providing a protection, essentially sealing off and not allowing police to apprehend them, that they would, take him away or murder him, right? That didn't happen initially. They had, they were able to enter the palace, relatively unscathed with very little resistance. But after a while, there was a police force that did arrive on the scene and did want to capture these people. So 3 of these men were killed. 11 of them fled to the Taiwanese embassy. 7 of them stayed and fought. Eventually, all of them were arrested again, other than Palacios. He remained there for a while. He found a way to, I think it was Jamaica, if I remember right. He fled to Jamaica, eventually was captured there, extradited to the US. He has pled guilty, and he is serving a life sentence. One thing I do want to note that I believe it was Geraldo there. He's one of the mercenaries who was killed. They found roughly about $50,000 in cash on him. There's never been any evidence that there were these millions of dollars there, but a lot of people do believe that there was more money there, and that we're getting into the speculation there. So Moise is killed, right? So who moves into power? That was the Haitian Prime Minister Ariel Henry. So he had been publicly announced and that he was appointed by Moise 2 days before the assassination. It took place roughly about a month or so before, but it wasn't announced to the public. Again, he was appointed by Moise. The reports I've read say that this isn't something that Moise wanted to do. That was pressure that came from Martelly, the former president of Haiti, who we'll go into a little more in a second. But essentially, I sort of view Moise as basically like a placeholder for Martelly. In Haiti, you can't serve consecutive terms. Moise was very obscure, he had really no real political backing before, and they essentially sort of installed there by Martelly, right? So Martelly had a lot of influence over the Moise administration. But so let's go back to who his handpicked successor was, in Ariel Henry. So he's not obscure. He, I will say, just sort of represents the elite, and he was part of a US-backed coup back in 2004. Again, like I said, he's part of the cover-up. So openly talking and communicating with the leader of one of the leaders of the assassination team, pertinent government officials who try to investigate this properly, they get fired. Any sort of election committee, he dissolves it. And with that said, with all of these red flags and fingers pointing to Ariel Henry, he still gets the support of the United States. And in fact, because the security situation got so bad, at one point, the US government was trying to pledge millions of dollars to help finance the Kenyan military to come into Haiti and act as a security force. But, as of March of this year, he did resign. That did eventually, so he had a really good run there up until about March, where the US State Department did publicly start to apply pressure to say, we want you to resign. this is part of my reasoning of why I don't believe that the assassination had the full pledged support of the US government. You'd have to really look at the history of Haiti and US government's involvement, where our government's been pretty darn brazen. Again, in 1993, there was what I would call a cocaine coup, where the military leaders in that country who were in charge, the de facto leaders, were also the biggest drug dealers. They were deeply tied with the CIA. Long story short, the US government has been very brazen about what they do. And this just doesn't have the same patterns as in the past. But again, what I'm going to go into more so in the future of this episode is that I do think that the US government had quite a bit of knowledge about what was about to happen. So I mentioned him before, Michel Martelly. As you can see in the picture there, I would sort of describe him as the elite, the bourgeoisie elite. You can see the picture there at the World Economic Forum. He's just a big advocate of the IMF, the World Bank, etc. He's a big advocate of multinational corporations, coming into Haiti. And he's the type of leader that the US government loves. We want economic and military allies in these countries. And his background, for one thing, nicknamed Sweet Mickey. So he was a professional singer, very successful in that regard. That name, though, in Haiti has a terrible history. So the 1993 coup that I mentioned, one of those leaders has that same nickname. Michel has ties to him. It's just the kind of nickname that you should never use that. Again, if you know anything about the history of Haiti, but again, that is who he represents. He represents the authority and the elite. So he's someone who spent quite a bit of time in South Florida and the Miami area as well. The United States essentially sort of handpicked and more or less put him into place. When you look at the election in 2011, Hillary Clinton's State Department basically pushed him in there. He was in third place in the voting. There wasn't enough of a majority candidate, so they had to go to the second round. He didn't even have the legal backing to be in that round. But again, because of the pressure by the US State Department under Hillary Clinton, he was put into place and then elected and put into power. Right. So I mentioned the New York Times investigation. I beg you to read it. I think it's very compelling. But again, what that investigation points to, it's very circumstantial, right? But it's strong circumstantial evidence. And it's presenting a theory that Martelly was behind the assassination. Now, the actual assassins, I know of absolutely no linking between Martelly and those assassins or any of the other people. But it presents a motive, and the motive being, if you look below, his brother-in-law, Charles Kiko Saint Remy, suspected to be one of the larger drug traffickers in the country. And there's a number of other drug traffickers, linked to Martelly in this investigation. Long story short, we're talking about someone who's sort of a puppet of the US government, all kinds of links to drug trafficking and corruption, right? So after he serves his term, he moves back to Miami. He stayed in Miami, which is something I really take issue with. You'll see a lot of elected officials from Latin America and the Caribbean that after their time and they amass all kinds of wealth while in office, they'll leave their home country and move to Miami or South Florida, right? It's a red flag, right? So in October of 2023, Martelly travels to Haiti. He is questioned by investigators. He stays there for roughly like a day or two and then goes back to Florida. That is coincidentally the same month that the United Nations issues a report that directly states that he funded gangs for political purposes. It lists off, it names all these different gangs that are involved in violence and kidnapping and drug trafficking, you name it, and that they were financed and supported by him while he was in office. So as a result of this information, Martelly, Saint Remy, they were sanctioned by the Canadian government. So when you sanction a person like that, you can't travel to the country. If you have any assets in that country, their government will freeze those assets. Well, that sanction really has no bite to it. As far as I know, Martelli has no assets, no properties in Canada, but he does live in the United States, and the United States government has not sanctioned him. If you look at just US government sanctions, we have a laundry list of people who we have sanctioned for all kinds of accusations, and it's alarming that the same treatment has not been extended to Martelli. All right. So the last thing that I was going to cover are the knowledge that the US government had about this assassination. So I really want to point to, the first thing I want to point to is, well, in 2023, February 2023, that's when Ortiz, Vientimilla, Intriago, in other words, the financier and CTU security, they're finally arrested in February of 2023, when within days after this assassination, pretty much every major media outlet, their faces, their story were out there. They were, the key people of interest. They were interviewed by the FBI and Homeland Security, but no arrests were made. And I bring that up because I want you to think about the general state of criminal justice in this country, where there are plenty of people sitting in a jail cell now who they could get it, they just can't afford the bail. And it's for very minor crimes, but we're talking about a major significant event in history. And these people were allowed to remain free for roughly 2.5 years until their arrest in February of 2023. Now, what I want to point out is, in the probable cause that the government issued, is they point to a meeting that took place on April 6th between the FBI and Ortiz and other conspirators, where the topic of regime change was discussed. With the FBI, Ortiz, and other conspirators present, tried to draw the FBI personnel into a discussion about regime change in Haiti. The FBI told the men in substance the FBI could not help them because Haiti had to solve its own political problems. So this is the probable cause the government issued to bring these men to trial. They're acknowledging that a discussion about regime change took place on April 6th. So let's go back. Now, a week later in this trial, the FBI agent was questioned by Vientimilla's attorney, and he says, we didn't list the full participants of that meeting. So let's take a quick look here. So this is Vientimilla's attorney questioning him, right? He goes, you reference, an April 6th meeting that did take place with the FBI and Ortiz, correct? That's correct. Vientimilla was not there, correct? Not that I'm aware of. As we scroll a little further here, you'll see, okay. Again, Your Honor, for the record, this is a meeting between Ortiz and the FBI. Okay. So this is what he says. We didn't list the full participants of that meeting, blah, 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 blah. So, think about it. You claim that there was these talks about regime change, but now you didn't list who was involved, who was in the meeting. That alone, it's just unbelievable. There's just something that's not truthful that's being presented there. Otherwise it's just gross incompetence. And I don't think it's gross incompetence. I think that there's some layer of truth that the government at this time is not willing to reveal. All right. So the next piece of evidence I want to point to is in the Sinan trial, right? There's even more contradictions that come out about this April 6th meeting. So let's go back there. All right. So this is his Sanan's attorney questioning the same FBI agents. So the question, and there were FBI agents who were invited to the meeting. So he now says, okay, it was under the pretense that they were going to receive terrorism information or maybe information about drug trafficking, right? So the attorney questions, and you would agree that had the FBI agents heard anything about forcibly removing a president or using any type of violence, they would have acted on that tip. Correct. That's why I said there were multiple meetings. Obviously, the FBI never acted on any type of tip of violence because obviously they did not stop the killing of the president. That's correct. To my knowledge, violence was not discussed at the meeting when the FBI agents were present, right? So again, there's this contradiction from where you're saying, hey, we were told about regime change in this meeting on April 6th, and now you're backtracking and saying, well, if we had known, then we would have stepped in and we would have prevented that, right? So I bring this up because this April 6th meeting, this is public record. There has been some media coverage about it. I point to the Miami Herald, Jacqueline Charles. She's done an amazing job there. It's, in my opinion, it's the one newspaper that's really dug into this story. In my opinion, that's in part because there is a large Haitian American community in the Miami area, but a story of this magnitude, it just hasn't received enough real investigative journalism, right? So what I'm about to show you, again, is from court documents from last month that I teased earlier, right? I think you needed to have the full story before seeing this, and I think that this is going to make a lot more sense. So this was on July 3rd, and it's for the attorneys for Ventimiglia. All right, so let's take a look. So let's look at this second part. So the defendant Intriago had multiple contacts and conversations with the witness and lawyer JC, who Ventimiglia seeks to depose. JC, who turns out to be a confidential informant for the U.S. intelligence agency, is on the information and belief, the author of the letter known as requesting international assistance. That's this one that we talked about earlier. Basically, they gave it the legal authority, right? He's also reviewed the legality and the validity of the arrest warrant, signed by Judge Koch, right? Here's the other part. Here's the really key part. So JC, an Ecuadorian lawyer who is exiled in Bolivia, also rendered a legal opinion about the legality and validity of the legal process, right? So I bring that up for a couple of reasons, because again, we have to think about what brought someone to be a confidential informant. It's usually you're trying to get your criminal charges reduced or thrown out of court, or you're looking to make money from sharing information, right? So here's this person who is exiled in Bolivia, the same country where this group, is accused of also looking to foment a coup. This person has this unbelievable piece of information that this group is going to try to remove a standing foreign leader from power. And we're supposed to believe that this information was not shared with the intelligence community, that the US government was not aware of what was going to happen. I don't find that believable in any way. Again, this is how an informant stays an informant. You provide useful information. They had information, again, about a foreign leader who was about to be removed from power and or possibly assassinated. So it's just really stunning. Like I said, this piece of information, I don't believe that anyone has reported upon this. If someone had the scoop, I do apologize in advance, but that's why I really wanted to get this out there. So there's a couple last things that I really do want to share with you. As I've been pointing out, the really soft touch of the criminal justice system in this case. Like I said, those three main organizers, they weren't arrested for 2.5 years. They were able to live freely in the United States. Well, again, the date on this document is July 3rd. of this year. So when we look at the status, and again, I'm probably mispronouncing it, Vietnamia was released from federal prison on the 16th. We look at Salages, released on the 17th. And Triago, released on the 17th. Ortiz, not released. He's still serving his time in Miami Federal Correction Facility. So to be clear, I'm not saying that their charges were dropped. I have no evidence that their charges were dropped. It just looks that they basically are, have bail status at this point. For, again, this is a historic crime to be able to live freely. That blows my mind. But yeah, just to sum up, I'm going to wrap it up here. I beg everyone, share this piece of information. This is news that needs to be spread. As this spreads, the more transparency will grow. We'll be able to find out more information about what really happened. And hopefully, I'm assuming that there are more people involved in this crime than the ones who I've presented here. I think that in order to make that happen, there has to be, again, this has to be much better known in the public sphere. I beg you to support my channel, like and subscribe. And again, please share this story. And thank you for listening.
It's a big club, and you ain't in it.
I am concerned that the size of some of these institutions becomes so large that it does become difficult for us to prosecute.
You can have a license. Price is $250,000, plus a monthly payment of 5% of the gross of all 4 hotels in the store. Corleone.